For those that might not be aware, on our Friday edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours, we have an open Q&A format. So if you have any questions or any parts of the platform you want to walk through, you're stuck in a trailhead badge, stuck on an issue at work, whatever it is, this is just a forum for you to come and ask questions and try to get help. Before I open it up, though, for questions, there is one thing that I wanted to walk through very quickly. And if you follow tech news and you've been on the internet for the last couple of weeks, you've probably been hearing about this thing, ChatGTP. Which is a new AI tool, which you can essentially ask it a question, ask it for advice, ask it to give you a list of 10 gifts that you could buy your wife that she'll actually enjoy this year. You can ask it anything, and it'll come back and actually give you answers. But what a lot of people have been doing, it can also write code, and it can even answer technology-based questions on Salesforce and things like that. So I just want to give a quick example of how this thing works and show you some of the limitations as well. Specifically around like coding, right? So if you go to your browser and you go to chat.openai.com, it'll bring you to this page, right? And just got this little box down here where you can ask it anything, right? So in the Salesforce world, you can see examples of other questions you might ask it besides Salesforce stuff. But if in the Salesforce world, you said something like, write me a validation rule that will prevent any updates to an opportunity if the stage is closed one, right? So you just type in a question like that. It'll think for a second, and then based on how many other people are working on this thing, it might take more than a few seconds, but you'll see it'll start typing out here and actually start building out a validation rule for you. And then it'll also give you explanation as to what it's doing, why it did it that way, things like that. So now, this is where you kind of have to take this with a grain of salt, right? Because you look at that formula and you're like, well, that's not going to work, right? Because it's checking to see if the stage changed and if the current stage is now closed one and the record type name is opportunity. Like that it doesn't make sense, right? So it'll give you answers and it'll actually give you the explanation about those things, but sometimes it's hit or miss on whether or not it's correct, right? So just be very careful with what they give you. Another example of this would be on the coding side, right? So here's an example I did earlier where I said, write an Apex trigger that prevents updates to a closed one opportunity. So very similar use case, but instead of a validation rule, I said, write a trigger for me, right? This is actually pretty good, right? So it's definitely a trigger. It gave it a name. It's on opportunity. It has the right context variable before update. It's iterating through the right thing. So it's going through trigger.new. So all the opportunities that have changed. And for each one of them in this for loop, it's checking to see if it's one and if it's closed. And if it is, it's going to add an error. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. It just wrote a trigger just by asking it a question. Well, let's just say you implemented this trigger in your sandbox and now you want to deploy it to production. Well, you can't because you have to write a test class. So that's where I say, okay, can you write a related test class? And again, this is conversational. So you can just ask a follow-up question to your previous question. You don't have to reword it or ask it again. You just say, okay, can you write a related test class? Well, this is where the problem comes in, right? Again, you're going to see this a lot with the code, but test classes in Salesforce, they have three main things you have to do. You set up the data, you execute your test, and then you validate that the test was successful. Well, even if you're not a developer, you might look at this and you could probably immediately spot the problem with this code, right? So the way it's setting up the data is to insert an opportunity with a test opportunity name, and then it sets the is one and is closed fields to true. Well, they're formula fields. You can't set them to true, right? So it knows that those fields as part of our test have to be set to true so that we can run an update and see if it actually works. But it doesn't know the fact that the is one and is closed are formula fields and they can't just be set like through the UI or through a test class. So again, if you didn't really know any better, you would look at this and say, wow, that's amazing. It wrote a test class. I'll just deploy that thing. But then when you start getting into the details, you start to notice little things like this where it just can't find that stuff, or it'll write a class for you and it'll put like Stockwell statements inside of a for loop or other kind of, non-best practices. So again, really cool tool. It can do a lot of things. You can ask it to write you a LinkedIn post about the importance of project management tools, and it'll write you a big thing about that. You could ask it, like I said, to come up with a poem about candy canes, or you can ask it to come up with options for gifts for Christmas. It can do all these things, but when it comes to coding, it's a little bit hit or miss on some of these. So I'll pause there. Any questions on this, or any thoughts on ChatGPT for those that have tried it?
Oh yeah, I think it's really cool. I did use it for some code, but I did have to guide it through it, or like narrow down like what this. You have to be pretty specific.
Yeah, yeah.
But it
I
is
will.
pretty sweet.
It is pretty slick. I would say one thing where the one area that I found is really good. Maybe it's just that Salesforce is its little niche, right? Maybe Apex is just like not cool, but for JavaScript, it's really good. So,
Oh, okay.
I mean, you can ask it questions like, here, let's do like write a JavaScript function that, when given two numbers, finds the uh, least common denominator. Now, I have no idea if I spelled that right. Yeah, I was going to say C's in English. Did good in science and math, guys, but C's in English. Okay. Now, I didn't test this one before, but you can give it a question like this, and for JavaScript type stuff, I've seen it do really well. And again, depending on how many people are on this thing, it might take a little while, but here we go. Yeah, so it even puts in the pseudocode, it puts in all the comments for you, writes your function. And something like this, you could probably take this and paste this into your code, and it would probably work pretty good for functions like this. And it's still going. So yeah, pretty impressive. It's pretty cool. And again, this is a relatively new thing. So as they kind of iterate on this and they add additional functionality, it can only get better. So it's pretty awesome. So again, any thoughts or questions before we move on?
Yeah, it's going to make us obsolete.
This will make us obsolete at some point. I am absolutely sure of that. Yes. What I think is actually really scary, not scary, but actually cool, but from a job perspective, kind of scary. If you go in here, try to do something like give it a request like write me a Lightning web component and then give it some weird use case like that I could use to track exercises when I go to the gym. And it will literally create you a Lightning web component with all the HTML, all the JavaScript, all that stuff included. So pretty slick. Yeah, it's getting pretty impressive, but definitely some limitations right now. But yeah, it's getting there.
I don't think it would make people obsolete though, because you still gotta tell it what to, it's not like autonomous, like where it will go in and like do. You still have to give it direction. Like if someone gives you business requirements, the user has to give the machine business requirement.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, even with something as simple as Google, there is a skill set that's required to ask the right question in the right way to be able to get the results that you want back. So there's definitely some of that too. But I have seen, folks that have already plugged this into Salesforce and they've, starting to build integrations to Salesforce for users to actually, work with this. So it'll be exciting to see how this develops over
Oh
time.
yeah, I think it's a great tool. It doesn't understand validation rules though. Like when I tried it on a validation rule, and it does it backward. It does it like the opposite, but it does give you like a template.
Yeah, and that's what we had just tested, where it kind of gave us like
Oh,
a
okay.
weird result of a validation rule, where it kind of gets the syntax, but it might not grasp fully the underlying framework of Salesforce and what record types are, objects, things like that. It just seems like it's a little fuzzy on that right now. So again, it can only get better. So, cool. So, any other questions on that before we open it up to questions? Let me check the chat too. I see there's a few chats in there. Yes, that is true. As long as it doesn't become self-aware, that's the fear, right? So it's what was that, war games where you just ask it a random question while we're sitting here on the call, like play thermonuclear war, and next thing you know.
There is one thing about this. Thanks for your feedback. I appreciate it for checking it out.
Yeah.
The knowledge base is pretty deep, but Salesforce is still kind of, like you said, a niche. So it doesn't quite understand all the nuances yet. But I went all over the map with this thing. I mean, they wrote me a cover letter, a resume, all geared towards Salesforce. It designed an org for me, gave me some names for some custom objects and some fields that I could put on the portfolio when I was gearing the questions that way. So it has a pretty good knowledge base and a range. The code, it does well like on Python, on JavaScript, the well-known
Yeah.
languages. Apex, like you said, not so much. But it is fun to play with. I mean, and it really helps you work on stuff because it augments your thinking. It's like having someone, looking over your chair or looking over your shoulder and saying, "Hey, why don't you try this?" So I think it's only been around for 10 years, so give it a chance. Elon Musk is a genius, but it's only been around for 10 years. But it's pretty cool. Thanks for talking about it.
Yeah, no, if you don't mind me asking now, I'm sure there's a few folks on the call that are, in various stages of trying to find jobs and things like that. How did you use it to create a cover letter? Like what kind of text did you put in there for it to spit you out a cover letter?
Just a general thing. Like I had to play with it. Like Sean was saying, you have to guide it through. You start off with a general question. Can you provide an example of a cover letter for a Salesforce job? And it dumps it out. Then you refine it. Can you provide a cover letter for a veteran looking for their first Salesforce job? Can you modify that cover letter for a veteran looking for their first Salesforce job that is not a college graduate? So it's based on how you ask the question. Because it remembers, it keeps track of your conversation.
Yeah.
So it refers back to whatever you said. Where I saw it bogged down was after the thread got too long, it started getting errors. And then you have to start a new thread.
Yeah.
And then you can't give it personal information because everybody sees this, so it's like it stores everything you say, like Google, right? It keeps a record. So that you can't give it personal information. So you only have to give it general statements to try to get it to give you the answer you're looking for.
So that's troubling. So you're saying when I ask it, given the following Discover card number, order 10 gifts for my wife and get them here by Christmas, that was probably a bad idea to put that into the public record.
It'll tell you it can't do that because it can contact the website.
Okay,
Oh
gotcha.
yeah, I can't.
Well, yeah, very cool tool. But for writing LinkedIn posts, putting in a paragraph that you wrote and saying, make this sound funnier, it could do all kinds of stuff. So definitely a kind of a cool tool to keep in your back pocket.
Yeah,
So,
what's nice if you ever need some quick cash, you go to one of those Fiverr sites and say that ask you for write a 500-word essay on something. You just come here and say, write me 500 words on Elon Musk. And it's really cool. And then you can take that, post it on Fiverr, get your $5.
I'm sure somebody has tried to do that. They have to have tried doing that. That's a great idea.
I got that from YouTube.
I will say that we do struggle sometimes to get my oldest child, my son, who is 15, to do his homework on time and do projects and all that kind of stuff. And magically, about a few days ago, after I showed him this OpenAI and we were talking about it and we were having a good time with making it write random stories with random characters and things like that, his project on the CIA, he turned that one around pretty quickly. So there was definitely some red flags that were thrown up here with students using this to answer questions or make projects and things like that. So, yeah.
Well, what a coincidence. That's remarkable. It's amazing. Cool.
Unbelievable. So, all right, cool. Well, if anybody has any other questions on Chat GTP or OpenAI or any of that stuff, definitely let me know. Otherwise, we'll open up for questions now. Sandy, I think actually you had pre-registered for a question. So we'll start with you.
So going back to that like nested if stuff that we were talking about last week, I managed to actually get a case in there as well, like within all that stuff. But kind of, I guess, related to that, if you have like those conditions where it's like this, and then there could be multiple choices from a pick list.
Mm-hmm.
So this, field 1 is always going to be this, but also field 2 could be a couple of choices.
Yeah.
For the condition to be true. Is there any way to simplify that other than having to basically rewrite, doing the or pick list value this like multiple times?
Yeah, before I just jump in and kind of create this from scratch, any chance you have an example of that, what it looks like that you're trying to update, that we can start as a baseline, or do you want me to create it from scratch here?
Let me see which one, if I can remember which one I was looking at. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to be anything specifically helpful, but it was like the text in one field equals flood, and then the pick list value, could be 3 different flood zones.
Yeah.
So if it's flood and this flood zone, or flood and this flood zone, rather than writing the or and put is pick
Yeah.
value this field and this choice, is there a way to simplify so you don't have to write that 3 times?
Yeah, maybe. So let me, before I answer this question, anybody have any thing they want to throw out there before I share my screen and show you this?
The only reason I didn't want to use case in that is because usually with case, at least the way I did it is, case also has to have what your value would be if it's this choice. And since they're all the same response, that was kind of why I didn't think case would necessarily be the perfect.
Yeah, so here, I'm going to share my screen. Let's go through an example here. So I'm just going to I went to the gear icon, went to setup, go to object manager. I'm going to open up the account object. We'll just use this as an example. And before I create the new, whatchamacallit here, the new formula field, let me just look. Okay, so we did have something here like favorite color. Let me just see what values I have in here. Okay, green, blue, red, blue, green. Okay, so we have a pick list field there. So let's just say that we had a formula that we were trying to write. What's the return type for this thing?
It's basically like an actual mathematical formula. So if these ones are true, we're going to use some sort of math formula. Otherwise, use this math formula.
Okay, so let's go with that. We'll just return a number. This probably won't make any sense, but let's just go with it, right? So in your case, we're going to check 2 things. So let's just say we tested, let's just use the account name, and then we'll use that favorite color field like this. Okay, so let's just say we had something where we said if the name is equal to test end, or I guess we can do, we insert like, not concatenate. We want to test, yeah, double end. Okay. So if the name is equal to test and the favorite color, and this is a pick list. So did you have like is pick val, something like that?
Yep.
Favorite color, red. So something like where you said if those 2 things, then it's going to be a 5. Otherwise, it's like a 7, right? Well,
right.
That's great if it's like 2 things, but now you're saying like, well, what if you had like, and so if you want to say if it was test and it was red, or if it was test and it was blue, and things like that, where you keep going back and forth, right?
Yeah.
So the long, complicated way of doing that, let's say, would be, so if we wrap these in parentheses, right? So we said if it was test and it was equal to red, or, and we can put these vertical pipe thingies here, and then if we just copy this, we might throw it in like that. And now we have this formula, right? So we would say if it was test and it was red, or if it was test and it was blue, return 5, otherwise return 7. Now, a way to simplify this, and I'm just going to put another line. We'll keep this here just so that we can use it as an example. And here, let me just do check syntax just to make sure I'm not. Okay, so that's good. So if we wanted to simplify this, we could do something like this, where you could say if the name is equal to test and then maybe we switch our parentheses around a little bit. We say it's equal to red, or is pick val blue, And I think I have all my parentheses right. Yeah. So something like that, where we check the test for the name one time,
Mhm.
and then we say, and it's either red or blue.
And that's
All right.
essentially what I have right now. I was just wondering if there was a way to kind of, since you're pulling the same field every time, if there was just a way to get those, only put the choices for the
Yeah.
ors.
Yeah. Now I guess so this we'll call this option 1. This one we'll say this is option 2. Now, what I'm curious here, let me here, I'm gonna pull this out for a second. Cut that. Let's just check syntax, make sure this one's good. Extra comma. So name is equal to this, and that I think it was this guy. Let's make sure. Okay. Yep. So that's good. All right. So we have option 1. This is option 2 that we just tested that we know works. Now, what we could do is in option 3, I guess, when you look at this, you're like, okay, we keep saying the word like is pick val and favorite color every single time. Like, is there a way to avoid that? Well,
Yes.
maybe, right? So we could do like, we could copy that again. And instead of checking is pick val favorite color every single time, what if we did this? And preface this, I have no idea if this will work, but what if we did case? And this is case, right? I always get confused between case and switch. Case, yeah. Okay, so if we said case, text favorite color, and then we said red, comma, true, got all the way over to blue, comma, true, and then the final other in a case statement, we're just going to say false. All right. So could we do something like this now? So we say if the name is equal to test, and is whatever this evaluates to come out to true. So we say if the text of the favorite color is red, we're going to return true. If it's blue, we're going to return a true. Otherwise, we just return false. So essentially, if the name is equal to test and this whole statement evaluates a true, return 5, otherwise return 7. So, I mean, it's shorter, that's for sure. We're getting shorter every time.
Mhm.
Is it more readable? Does it even work? I guess would be the first question. So let's check our syntax here. Incorrect argument type or function case. Let's see, text, color. Then we have text and a Boolean. We have text and a Boolean, otherwise false. And then in the end, 5, 7. All right, so maybe this doesn't work with Boolean values, maybe for a case statement. Yeah, so this might be, this is where,
I think it's just you don't need the text at all.
so you're thinking that this right here. See, I would have thought that it would yell at me for incorrect argument for function case. I gotta think it has something to do with the true. So I'm just gonna just for fun here, I'm gonna wrap these in quotes, treat them as strings instead of Boolean, and then we'll actually put in case is equal to true, like that. Expected. Oh, yeah. So that's a really ugly way to do it, but yeah. So I think that's two things. Maybe that text thing, but also I don't think case statements work with Boolean values, and I think we might have talked about that at one point in the past. But yeah, so we got shorter every time.
Not much on that last one.
Yeah, you could go like this, and then like I said, there's always that question there, like it's shorter, but is it more readable? But if you're in a situation where you're starting to hit that limit for like the size of a formula or whatever it is, like 4,000 bytes or whatever it is, maybe you could save some space by doing something like this. But otherwise, I would probably go with the more readable, something like this.
That's fine. I was just curious if there was something. And of course, every time I tried to Google, it was just trying to tell me how to use the or how to use a picklist val kind of thing. And I'm like, that's not helpful. I want the combination of stuff.
Yeah.
Try ChatGPT, see what it tells you.
So I didn't hear that last part. Can you say that one more time?
I said you could always ask ChatGPT and see what it tells you.
We could try that. I'm guessing it's not going to be very helpful, though. I think the one takeaway, though, I would say, Sandy, whatever one you think is the better way or whatever one you think is the most readable. That's one thing. But one of the takeaways I would say is that keep in mind that not only can you nest if statements, but you can actually nest case statements inside of an if statement. So while it might not be a great solution for this particular use case, it could be a good thing that you might be able to do somewhere else, where you can embed that case statement right inside of your criteria for another if statement or some other formula.
And I did actually do the case embedded within an if, just because for that particular situation, it was always that if the text, the account was text or test, and then if the pick list was this, then the value should be this. Whereas if the pick list was this, then the value should be that. So that is where I did do an if and a case together, and it worked out fine. But yeah, I was just hoping to see if I could shorten the.
Yeah, no, I could shorten this to like this, where instead of we used a string called true and false, we could just put numbers in there, and then we just check to see if it's equal to that number. But yeah, a lot of different ways I think you could do it, but I don't think there's any real clean way. Now, I guess, you know what? Let me take that back. Maybe the other option. Okay, I'm going to walk that back before I even say it. I was going to say, can we use the OR function? But even in the OR function, you have to give it the full thing. You can't just say like, is the favorite color equal to, and then an or like red, comma, blue. You have to say, or favorite color equals red, comma, favorite color equals blue. So you're still in that thing where you got to repeat, the field name every time. So yeah, I think that's probably as short as you're going to be able to get it. But if anybody else has any other thoughts or better way to do that, let me know.
Yeah, I was looking for short and clean, not just short.
Yeah.
Bill, I have a question about the problem. Is it a situation where it's two criteria the whole time, or are some of the pick list values decided with one criteria and then it gets progressively more complicated?
So the long answer, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if statements nested within each other. So that's why I was just trying to make it a little bit cleaner with not having to do either another if, like an if multiple times, or trying to get rid of some of those ors within an if. So that was all it was. It was just trying to make it cleaner, just because it's already a pretty complicated formula.
If it's an issue of readability, it's also possible to create other formulas that break it down, and so when you get to the final one, it reads more simply. Understand where I'm.
That's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah, if you can eliminate some of the other things, by the end you might just have a single case with just the one variable. I did have a question. Last week we talked about help text in a formula, and I've never done that at the beginning. Can you just show me what that looks like at the top, writing?
Help text in a formula.
A word, sorry, a description, I guess, is not help text as much as just at the very beginning. I think Steve brought it up. Yeah. Thanks, Steve. That's it.
Oh,
yeah, I got.
Are you wait a minute, hold on a second. Are you telling me that in a formula field I can put comments?
You gotta follow me, Bill.
There is absolutely no way that works, and if it does,
no, you gotta do
it's like
slash. Oh, slash.
Okay.
Sorry. And then close it, and it's one per line. So on that first line, you got to close it at the end with a /.
No.
Yeah. I'm glad I asked this question, because I thought I was I felt alone in not knowing this.
That is just mind blowing. You're kidding me.
Yeah.
So like this.
Check syntax, that's your pass.
I was wondering if you could actually do that within a formula.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about last week. So when you open it up, the first thing you see is a description of what you're about to see. Mind
so blowing. I can do like option 1, option 2, and then I could do like.
I am totally going to make use of that in the org I'm working in, because it is stupid complicated.
Can I take up the share screen for a moment, Bill?
Yeah. What other thing that I've been living under a rock and didn't know about that you could share with me? That is amazing.
Everyone see that? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is just better formula. So just the Chrome extension you can do.
Love it.
And then so your comments will come up in a different color, so you can see like
That's cool.
when your comment starts or ends. And then yeah, you can put them in wherever you like. So good. And then yeah, you get like the tab indentation here as well. So this makes it a little bit easier. So
It is really awesome.
yeah, so with
that one.
like your one, Bill, like if you're going to do a case, like I'd always split it into multi-line.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
readability, like close. Yeah.
Yeah,
I checked the formula field. There is no split method like an Apex. And if we have a long text and we want to divide sentence one sentence in flow, how can we succeed this without any Apex? Do you have any idea for that?
Yes, I think we can take a look at that. Now, before we go that route, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to paste this into our Slack channel. And I'll just take a very quick moment to mention, if anybody is not in our Military Trailblazer Office Hours Slack workspace, you definitely want to join that, because all the notes, all the links, all the stuff that we discussed during these calls, I'm going to post them there. It's just so much easier to put code blocks and screenshots and things like that in Slack compared to trying to put it into LinkedIn or the Salesforce community. So with that, let me copy the link and I'll throw that in the chat right now. And that way, if you're not in there, you can get in there. Okay, so I just pasted that there. I honestly forget who mentioned that about the commenting, and Steve, I know you picked it up there, but amazing. That is that's life-changing. All right, so setting that aside, let's go back to the question. So can you repeat that now? So we're in flow, and what do you want to do in a flow?
Normally, in Apex, we can get a long text, a kind of paragraph, and
Yep.
we can divide then sentence one sentence easily.
Yeah,
And
like doing a plus
we
equals
can-
or something like
We
that.
can use a collection and we can evaluate all sentences. I want to do the same thing on flow without using any line of Apex code.
Okay.
How
So
can we succeed that? Is there any formula?
yeah, so let me say it back to you, and then you tell me if this is right, and then we'll jump in there. So basically, within your flow, you eventually want to have like a big paragraph of text, but you essentially want to do it kind of one line at a time.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to evaluate line by line, and I want to check the lines in a loop or something like that.
Okay, so you want to do some kind of validation line by line, or you just want to build like a paragraph line by line?
I want to read all line in a separate loop flow.
Okay, so not 100% sure. Let me close this. Okay, so if I were to go, oh, I should have saved that thing. I hope I saved that thing. What's the chance? Oh, there we go. Okay, so let me just save this thing because I'll come back to this and I'll put this in our workspace here. I'm actually very surprised that by hitting the back button, it saved the text that was in that field. I did not expect that at all. Okay, so all right, so let's go into a flow. So just to so we're in setup, we go to flow in the quick find, we click on that link. I'm going to click on new flow. And let me do this thing. I'm going to do one thing first, and then you tell me what you want to do next with it. All right. So when I think about like building a paragraph of text without actually having to write a paragraph of text, there's a couple ways we might do that. Now, just to get through this first screen here, I'm going to say we're going to run this on account. Whatever an account is updated with no criteria, we're just going to do it after save. All right. Now, if on the manager side over here, we had a new or a variable, we call this, what do we call this thing? Paragraph, right? So we could make this of type text. And
I put that text from Lorem Ipsum.
I'm sorry, say that again. Yeah, text from like just some random text, right? Yeah.
That's a random text.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is like, if you just wanted to add text to that to build a paragraph, but do it a piece at a time, if that was a use case, and then I'll come back to you. But if that was a use case, I mean, we should be able to go in here and say, add my text, one sentence at a time. All right.
Text
And then,
area, because text were limited to
well, for variables within a flow, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they have a text area versus a text. I think it's all
you're
bucketed
probably
in
right.
text.
I was thinking like just a normal, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, I think for this it's just a text type. But in this case, we could say paragraph add. This is the first sentence like that, and then I can go right underneath it, and we can say paragraph add. This is the second sentence, and this is where I kind of wish I did a screen flow, because then we could display this on a screen and make sure it's actually working. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, if you think about Apex code where you had like string, my string is equal to an empty string, and then you say like my string plus equals sentence one, my string plus equals sentence two, and that kind of thing. This would be the equivalent of that, right? Now, I don't think this actually answers your question, so I'll come back to you. So once you have all these sentences added to your paragraph, what would you want to do with them? Or what was the original kind of question there?
I'm asking the reverse of them. We have
So you want to
three
take a
line of,
paragraph and break it up into individual sentences?
yes, yes.
Okay. All right. So we could probably do that. Let's think of this. How would we do that? I guess we would have, well, first of all, we have a variable, some text. And we can have this as text. And then, like you said, we can just, we could put some kind of value in there, like some kind of paragraph or something. And I guess you'd want to break it up by, how would we break that up? I guess we'd want to do that with, based on like commas, or periods, something like that, where you basically split it up by the punctuation marks.
We can use commas.
Okay. Anybody familiar with that? Has anybody gone through that, where you have text in like a paragraph and you want to break it up into comma separated values and iterate through them one at a time?
I search on internet, people discuss about that, but they are using Apex at the end of the story.
Yeah.
I can do it already on Apex. Just I want to wonder if I can do the same on Flow.
Be a limitation.
Yeah, let's see.
Maybe some kind of formulas can help, but I cannot solve the iteration and creating a loop.
Yeah, so I think, okay, so if you had something like this, and you want to split that, Flow can't do it natively, you need Apex to help you. Yeah, so I think this is what you keep coming back to, is that one way or another you need Apex. But you know what? Okay, I'm gonna take that back. I think you can do it. Here's how I would do it. All right. I'm gonna back out here. Let's back out to a screen-based flow, so we can actually see this in practice as we go through here. So this is a clunky way to do it, but now I'm kind of thinking back to multi-select pick lists and how we've processed them in the past. So let's do a new flow. In this case, we're going to do a screen-based flow. And let's set this up first. We'll keep it simple here. Let's create a new variable, call this CSV text, right? And data type is going to be text, and default value is going to be value 1, comma, value 2, comma, value 3. Okay, so that's my default value. I have some text in that variable. Now let's just, that could have been a field from an object. It could be anything, but we have 3 values separated by commas, right? So just to make sure that that default value actually worked, what I'm going to do here is let's just create a screen, and we're going to say, we'll call this display screen. And on this display screen, I'm going to put display text, and in there, we're just going to show our CSV text. All right. So what did I do wrong here? No. Display current CSV text, whatever. Okay, so let's see if that's working. I'm going to save this thing, test screen, whatever. So let's see if that at least displays our value and make sure that default value thing worked. That's kind of step number one, right? Okay, so it does. So there's our 3 values. So we know that part of it's working. Now let's just say we want to iterate through those and actually start breaking it up and adding it to a collection. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is create a new variable. This is going to be my individual values collection. I'm not doing good on naming conventions today, guys. Just bear with me. So individual values collection. This is going to be text, and it's going to allow multiple values. All right. So every time we loop through this and we grab a new value, we're going to add it to this collection. All right. Now, how do we do that? That's a great question. Well, first thing we know that we're going to have to do is we're going to have a formula. So this will be the leftmost value. And this formula is going to be of type text. And I'm so happy they added this thing here, because I think for a while they didn't have these functions here, which was kind of ridiculous if you think about it. But there should be a function in here that is something like left. Yeah, there you go, left. All right. So the text that we want to get the leftmost thing from is going to be our CSV text. And then we have to tell it how many characters. Well, we don't know how many characters. We have to figure that out. So the way we can do that is to use another function, which is, I think they have it in here, and I think I can type here find. So I'm going to find, again, in the same exact text, if I can copy that with the brackets, it's a little small. So within this text, I want to find a comma. So like that. Okay, so I want to find the leftmost text that is from 0, which is the beginning of the string, all the way through to the first comma. All right, so if I check that syntax, okay, that looks good. And then when I find that, that's going to be my formula. What I'm going to do is just to kind of show that that part is working. Let's throw that on a screen too. So call this current value and display text. Call this current value display. Is it nice enough to put the underscores? No, it's not. Okay. Okay, and in this, I'm just going to put current value text. I think, what did I call that thing? See, this is where I said that my my naming conventions start to fall apart. Leftmost value, that's what we want to. Okay, so let's just do that. All right, so now I'm going to save this and let's run it. Okay, so on this first screen, we should see our full list. And when I click next, what I would expect to see is value 1. And I don't see that at all. Okay, so where do we go wrong here? Let's see. So let's look at our leftmost value. We want the left from CSV text, and we're going to find in that text the first comma. So that should be the number that we get. So yeah, that looks like that should work. And then on our current value, we're displaying leftmost value. All right, let's see. And
Are there 3 parameters that you want that for the capturing the value? Because you're not really telling it where to start, I guess.
Yeah, let's take a look at that again. So find. So when we do a find, we want the search text. Oh, you know what? I got them backwards. Thank you, Steve. I think I absolutely got that backwards. So we want to find this text in that text. Let's see, what did I do? Oh, I guess we don't want that down there. Is somebody going to tell me that I can start putting comments in my flow formulas too? Because that would just blow my mind as well.
Yeah, you can put it anywhere, mate.
Unfreaking believable. Okay.
I got
That's
a
where I
similar
plan on using
formula,
it.
Bill,
Oh.
like in the chat.
What do you got in the chat here? See.
Like a similar formula I built the other day.
Nice.
Yeah. So this one, they had like a 4-word string with spaces, and they wanted to insert a word at the second space. So Similar idea to what you're building, but just
Yeah.
the space of the column.
Yeah. Now, so now how do you pronounce your name? I want to make sure I got that right. Is it
Selçuk.
okay? So if you look here, we have our three values separated by commas. When I click next, using that formula, now that grabbed that first value. So grab the first value up to the comma. So just as an example, what we can do now that we have that first value and we've proven that it works, what I can do is not click on that thing. It's force habit from the old view, but from here, I can do an assignment. So add current value to collection, right? And then we have our individual values collection. I'm going to add leftmost value. Okay. So we add the leftmost value. And then the next thing I would want to do is remove that first value from my string, right? So, basically creating another formula that removes that value. So let's do a formula. So left value removed, type text. And then I should be able to, I'm going to put whatever in there just for now. And I want to just copy this here. All right, so left value removed is going to be, in this case, and again, you're going to have to start working with the character lengths and things like that to make this perfect. But if we're just doing this very quickly, I should be able to go to the rightmost text now. And I can say for the text, that is going to be my, where is it here? So this is my CSV text. And as far as the number of characters, I would want to do the length of the current one. So I think it's just len, is that right? Yeah, so it's the total number of characters in my CSV text, whatever's left in that CSV text, minus, and then I'm just going to paste this in here, but in this case, it's just going to be, minus, and I know that I have all kinds of spacing issues here. And again, this is very small. Let's move that up here. All right, so we want to get the rightmost of this text, and then it's going to be the length.
There should be colors for the parentheses.
I didn't catch that. I'm sorry.
Flow must be updated with the colorful version for the parentheses.
Yeah, that's a great tool that a lot of folks use that I always say that I'm going to do, but I can never get it set up in Firefox here. But length minus the find that in this, and that's the closing print right there. Okay, so again, this is very ugly. But let's see if that works here. So length of the CSV text minus wherever that value is. Okay. All right, so now we have that text, and then in my assignment block here, I should be able to just set now CSV text equal to left value removed. And then once that's done, and this is the part where I really don't like the new auto layout, but I'm going to switch this over to freeform for a second. So we had our first screen. We confirmed that we see all the values. We have the second screen that confirms that we're seeing the current value. We do our assignment where we add that value to the collection. We then reset the text to be whatever the text was before minus the first value. And then what I would do is I would just connect it back to the beginning, right? And this is basically a loop that we would do, not using the loop element, but kind of an arbitrary loop. And then somewhere in here, we would put a decision block that would say like, is there any more commas or are there any more values left? And then once it's done, that's when we would break out and say, okay, we've processed our list, got it down to individual collection. So again, let's just see if that right logic worked. And again, you're probably gonna have to do some work to get rid of the commas, but I don't want to activate that. Sorry. Let's run. All right, so in this case, we have a set of values. When I go to the next, the leftmost value is value 1. So when I click next here, it should add that value to the collection and then remove value 1 from my list and then start me back to that original screen. And there you go. Now we're at value 2. Click next. The current value is value 2. When I click next, It takes us back to the original screen. That's value 3. I click next. And that's where it's going to fall apart because I have no decision blocks, checking to see if there's any additional values, checking if there's additional commas, all that kind of stuff. But just as a kind of a model, does that make sense for how you might do that processing through a paragraph based on punctuation, where you break it up one value at a time, find that punctuation, add that block to your collection, remove that from the big paragraph, and then go through and basically do this kind of I don't want to call it a fake loop or a
Fake loop.
yeah, but you kind of get the idea of how you might do that with this.
I think we should do this by using auto launch flow and
Yeah,
if
keep in
we
mind.
need,
Yeah, keep in
we
mind, you
can
don't
use
need
a
these
ref-
screens. There's absolutely no
Yeah.
need to have screens in this case. I just did that to demonstrate as it's going through that it's working, but the same exact logic would apply in an auto launch flow where you're just checking the values, checking to see if it still has a comma in there, going through and looping through, and then eventually you would get to a point where you'd have your collection with all the individual values or paragraphs or whatever it is in there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so apologies, that's not a final solution that I gave you there as far as like, that it would work, but as a model, that could be a way that you could attack that with those string functions. And if there's a better way to do that and anybody has that, I would love to hear it. There's all kinds of things that we can do in Apex and JavaScript just by, splitting a paragraph just by using, you can just give it the whole thing and give it the character you want to split on, and it'll just spit out an array or a list. But within a flow, we kind of have to force that and do it by that kind of manual looping, so to speak. So. Yeah. So any questions on that, or otherwise I'll jump over to Sean. I see you have your hand up. Sean, what do you got?
Okay. I was just trying to. I didn't know if you were still talking. I was just trying to wait.
No, you're good.
I
Yeah.
have
What
a
do you got?
declarative roll up. That I'm trying to see if it's possible to do. I think I can share my screen.
Sure. Yeah. So are you using DLRS or rollup helper, or are you trying to do a rollup in
Yes.
Flow?
The DLS one, declare one.
Okay.
Did it show my screen?
Yeah. So I can see you're on the manage lookup rollup summaries. Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't. Usually it has like a little outline. I didn't see the outline either. But I know how to do them. But in this case, I don't know if it's really possible. So I was doing a requirements go from task to case.
Okay.
But on task, I don't see a lookup relationship to case.
Yeah, so there's I believe, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talk about like tasks and events or activities, if we want to put them in that bucket, there's a single field that is a polymorphic field, right?
Maybe the what ID?
Yeah, that would be the what ID. So the what ID should contain the ID of whatever that task or event is related to, whether it's an account, a case, or anything else. So in your DLRS, in your formula, you should be able to use that what ID field. And you might not see it here on the task side, but if you actually go to the activity object, I believe you could see it in there.
I used the what ID here, and
Yeah.
then I used the parent as case, child as task.
Yeah.
And then here, I thought it. I was sort of trying to use the ID.
Well, you're trying to get a count, right?
Yeah, I tried the ID, and I also tried the actual field name itself,
Well,
which is the
so
actor.
just to be clear, you're trying to get the number of tasks that are related to that case?
Yes, the number of the number of open
Yeah,
or
so
no,
the count
yeah,
where
I'm
they're
trying to
open.
get this field. Yeah, this field is going to be rolled up. One of the things too, not to cut anyone off, but I think date field is going to be min and max. I don't know if they can be some.
No, so in this case, if you're just trying to get a count, like the number of open activities for today, then I think you would want to set that aggregate operation to be count. Because
Well, you
the
can
only
do
thing you
count.
could do to an ID field would be to count it. Like the minimum ID or the maximum ID, that would make sense. If you were trying to do a date field, you could do the minimum date or the maximum date. But in this case, when you're just trying to get a count, I think that's the operation that you'd want to do. Now,
What threw
as
me
far
off is because I think this field right here is actually a date field, but it kind of threw me off. I don't know.
yeah,
But
but
here's
again,
all
that's
my
but again that
everything.
date field that you have there is part of your criteria. So it's not that you're trying to do any kind of math, or you're not trying to aggregate that
Oh,
specific
okay.
field. That's just part of your criteria.
Okay,
Um,
and this is actually the field that's being rolled up. I guess it's ID.
Yeah, so that's the field that's trying to aggregate, and then the operation you're trying to do. So if it's an ID, you just want to get a count of those, number of
I see.
records, the count of ID. Yeah. So I
But
wonder.
here's the error that I'm getting. I get this relationship thing. It doesn't recognize these fields, but they're there though.
Can you show me that the status field on the task object?
Yes. And then
Okay,
I
so
use
field name.
this.
Okay, jump back over to that formula. Let's go back to your the actual thing. All right, so let me just take a look here. So we have the parent object as case, child object as task. Okay, and then you have the relationship field is the what ID, and status equals open, and activity date equals today. That's the only part that I have kind of a doubt on. I wonder if just for now, if you were to
I think
copy.
I did a test in here. Just to check it. I think it ran. It ran, but it didn't pull anything. But it's not giving me any like an error.
Yeah. Yeah, what I was going to say is if you go back into your DLRS page there, and just as a test, cut out the relationship criteria and just try to save it like that without any other criteria in there, just to see
Okay.
could you get a count of all the things that are related to that. All right, now what's that error? So field status, activity date doesn't exist on child object. Now the relationship. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe take those out too, because I'm not fully sure what those do. But if you just save that, let's just confirm that that piece works. The what ID works. All that kind of stuff works.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah. So for the criteria, maybe it's something in DLRS how you actually put the criteria in there and can use today.
I think
I'm not really
today needs to be capitalized. I think because it's like a reserved term.
Right.
And you don't have to put parentheses like it's a function, right? It's just today.
Yeah, but all capitals. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, change that today to all capitals, and then let's just try to save without doing anything else and see if that does it.
And then down here, I'm pretty sure you have to put the fields that you use.
But before you do that, try to take that out and just save without putting anything in there. Just do it one step at a time here. Okay, so that's progress. Didn't throw an error. So as far as the relationship criteria fields, what is in that and whether they have to be like comma separated or one on each new line, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I can't remember. I guess I'm trying to see how it. I just know you. If you put a field here, it has to be here as well. I think.
Okay. Yeah. So what I would say is, I'm just looking at the time. I do have to jump to another call, but what I might ask you is, if you do get this working, since we're talking about this, I'm going to paste a link to DLRS for those that are not familiar, where you can create roll-ups on lookup relationship fields. But if you can paste a screenshot to this once you get it to work, I think that would be great for people to follow up on.
The use case, I don't know if anyone knows, but if you don't have a master detail relationship, this is like another way to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. The nice thing about this too is that the fact that DLRS will actually run it, you can schedule to run it too. So the fact you have today in there, that's going to change every day. So nice thing about it is you can set it to run every night or every morning, where it'll reprocess those roll-ups. So, well, cool. Yeah, Stephen, if you can, or I'm sorry, Sean, if you can paste that, if you get that working, I'd love to see that. And for those that haven't joined the Slack workspace, please do so. And then I'll post this in the channel, just so you guys have the links from the things that we discussed today.
Yeah. It ended up saving. I took a screenshot. I'll put it in there.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all. Hope you all have a great weekend. And just as a reminder, we are not meeting next week and we're not meeting the week after that. So our next Friday edition of Office Hours will be on January 6th. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and we'll see everybody next year. So appreciate it. Thank you all.